to Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Weldin. Today's story is Chapter 4 of The Wylderwood, Book 2, a fantasy serial co-written for you by Daniel Hinds and Joseph Montebello. There are 6 chapters in Book 2, and the last 2 will be released as one episode in 2 weeks. Be sure to tune in then. Thanks. Enjoy the episode. The Wylderwood, Book 2, Chapter 4. The group stopped at the top of the hill, where Nezzy had first seen the cart. Already, the larger group of Okarr had joined the 3 who had attacked first, and they all came clomping up the hill. "Hide," Wax hissed. All of them threw themselves into the undergrowth by the side of the little trail. Wax found themselves shoulder to shoulder with Nezzy. There wasn't much cover, and the heavy hoofbeats of the 3 Okarr were growing closer. They watched Nezzy spread her hands in front of her. Her skin blushed green, and then the bushes and ferns around them grew taller, thicker, fuller. It wasn't much, but it would definitely make them harder to spot. Wax eased a wide leaf aside, their hand sticky with a sweet-smelling sap oozing down the stem of it, and saw a large group of Okarr. They had clumped together near the top of the hill, probably planning their next move. They were strange creatures, like none that Wax had ever seen before. They were covered in a dark bluish fur that helped them nearly disappear into the shadows. They were taller than Lochlan and Harks, but not as tall as Gothak when they walked with their legs curled under. Their faces were long, like a horse's, but narrower, with little dark eyes. Each of them had a pair of thin, purplish horns growing from their foreheads, and a sharp pair of fangs sprouting down from their muzzles. They all wore strange armored vests. Loops and rings of ragged metal draped from their shoulders and spilled down to their waists. They carried short spears like the one Wax had picked up. The halfling tried to count, but their dark fur blended into the shadows of the dim night. They guessed there were 15 or 20 of them total. Too many, they thought. Far, far too many. Nezzy was staring at them too. The elf girl looked frantic, and Wax knew how she felt. Unsure and powerless and weak and scared. Wax had felt all of those things so many times. Scared that the enemy was approaching. Scared for yourself. Scared for others that needed you and you might not be able to help. It felt strange to see all that in an elf's face. Usually elves were the ones causing those feelings for Waxham. A steady wind had picked up and was blowing up the hill, carrying with it the voices of the Okarr guards.
"What was that magic light they had? I can't hear a thing over this wind. We have to get the brats back to the boss. What if there's another attack waiting somewhere up the path?"
The Okarr spread out a little, cocking their heads to listen. Wax held their breath, and their hand found Nezzy's. The elf was shaking, and Wax gave her a little squeeze. The Okarr got closer and closer, just feet away from where they were hiding. One sniffed at the air and then shook its head.
"Blah! All I hear is wind. All I smell is muskraptor. They must have run off. Let's just catch up to the cart."
The Okarr all turned and headed back down the path. After a few minutes, they were all gone, following the cart into the darkness. Wax felt a wave of relief, and then heard Gothak sigh from across the path. Slowly, they all rose up from their hiding spots and gathered together. "What happened?" Harks asked, her hands smoking and her eyes wide and wild.
"Yes," Gothak said, looking at Nezzy. "What happened?"
The half-giant held the broken purple Okarr horn out in his palm. He looked at Nezzy, then down at the ground, and then dropped it.
"I thought we could defeat them by the horn," Lochlan said. "Why didn't it work?"
"I don't know." Nezzy sounded surprised that they were asking her. Wax knew then that they had been right about Nezzy. "I'm not the only one with a secret," they thought. "You've never seen Okarr before, have you?" Wax asked. Nezzy blushed, and Wax knew she was just realizing why they were all looking at her. She'd told them that she'd often traveled in the Wylderwood with her mother, but that didn't seem to be the case.
I've never seen them in person. Not exactly. No, maybe I can think of another song to help, though.
Another song? Harks asked hotly. Here it comes, Waxham thought. Looking Nezzy right in the eye, Harks continued. Another song! Everything's a song! Since we've been in these woods, you've sung songs and rattled off poems about every tree and animal we come across. You've talked about things that you read in your book. Know what you haven't said? I remember seeing this before. Nezzy looked down at the ground. Nezzy looked down at the ground and said nothing. Lochlan chimed in. Never mind. If she hasn't seen them, she hasn't. What does it matter?
No.
Nezzy shook her head a little.
It matters. She's right.
A teardrop slowly trailed down her cheek and fell at her feet. They were all staring at her intently, and for a moment, a silence lingered.
It matters because I've never been in the Wylderwood before. I only know about it from the book and the songs. I lied.
Harks turned her back on the elf girl and crossed her arms. Gothak sounded a little shocked. What? Lochlan tried to cut in again. Let's just get going. No! Harks spoke loud and clear. No, I'm not going with her. I followed her into the Wylderwood because she said she knew all about it, but it's not true. Harks turned to face Nezzy, her voice steady but tears welling in her eyes. We are off the edge of the map. This is the wild unknown where people don't come back from, and we followed you because you said you knew it. Why would you tell me that when you knew it wasn't true? I thought you were my friend. She turned and walked off, crossing the path and stopping to lean against a tree just before she would have disappeared from sight. Nezzy sat down hard on the ground, her arms around her knees and her head bent to touch them. Gothak looked uncomfortable. I want to make sure those things are gone, he said quietly, and he headed down the hill. Lochlan looked from Nezzy to Harks and back, clearly not sure what to do. Waxham knew what to do, but it made them feel a little sick to their stomach. They had never had a lot of friends. Fellow soldiers, sure. Co-conspirators, yes, but never friends. Wax had trusted and relied on a lot of halflings during the war for the Swallowed Kingdom, but had never gotten close to any of them. The halfling didn't want to talk about this stuff, but they also knew that the group all needed each other. Edgewater was in ruins. They were deep in the Wylderwood, and they would need to stick together to see this through. Waxham caught Lochlan's eye and gestured toward Nezzy. Lochlan looked surprised, but Wax didn't wait for him to argue. They just walked over to Harks. The sorceress didn't look at Waxham, but they saw her trying to hide her tears. What are you going to do? Wax asked. Harks turned and snapped. You could ask her that, but she'd probably just lie to you, too. Wax sighed a little. She lied, and you believed her. Now she told you she lied. What are you going to do about it? What do you mean? I'm not going to burn the forest down if that's what you're worried about. Wax tried to stay calm. You can do two things. You can go off by yourself, or you can stay with the group. If you go, I don't know what you're going to do. But if you stay, you're going to have to deal with this. Harks's shoulders sagged a little, and she spoke a little more quietly. Why would she lie to me? She's supposed to be my friend. I don't know, Wax said. They thought about it for a moment. People lie about all kinds of things, for all kinds of reasons. The question is, can she still be your friend? If you really can't trust her, we can't stay together, and I don't know what will happen. But me? I'm going after that cart. When we catch up to those things, we'll be outnumbered, but the little ones, they'll need us.
They'll need you, and we'll need you too. Wax rested a hand on her shoulder and was only a little surprised to find she was hot to the touch. Will you be there? Harks hung her head. I'll be there, she said quietly. Wax nodded, but they knew it went further than that. What if it was just her, they said. What if there were no little ones, and it was just Nezzy who needed you? She lied to you, but if she needed you, if she was the one they had in that cart, would you be there for her? Hark sniffled and said nothing for a moment. Then she nodded her head, choking up a bit as she said, Yeah, I'd be there for her. She rubbed her eyes roughly. Why? Wax asked. They knew why, but they figured Harks needed to say it out loud. Because she'd do it for me, Harks said, and then she started really crying, hands over her face. I would, Nezzy said. The elf girl had come over, silent as a shadow, and stood just a step behind Wax. Tears streamed down her face. The two girls looked at each other. Oh, Harks, I'm sorry, Nezzy cried, and Harks grabbed her in a big hug. I'm sorry I lied. You all wanted it to be true, and we were stuck in the forest, and the Wylderwood brought us all back together. I was worried if you knew I'd never been here, you'd all leave, and I'd have to go after Asla alone. Harks hugged her tight and laughed madly. You dolt, she said. Of course we'd never leave you alone. We're in this together. And if this forest wants to eat you, it's going to have to go through me first, and it's going to get one big flaming case of heartburn. Nezzy started laughing too. The two of them stood holding each other, and Wax slipped away. I don't cry, and I don't hug people, Wax thought, not sure if they felt good or bad about that. They cleared their throat as they walked away. Gothak was just coming back from scouting, and Wax and the half-giant got back to Lochlan at the same time. I think they'll be all right, Wax said, as calmly as they could. Good, said Lochlan. I'm not thrilled she lied, but oh well. She knows what she knows. It'll help or it won't. My master, Sir Rancier, well, he might be a traitor, I don't know. I want to finish what we started. Orlam, he'd want me to save those kids and he'd want me to stop the warlock, so that's what I'll do. Gothak clapped Lochlan on the shoulder and nodded once, then waved a hand down the hill. They're gone. The guards are on foot. The Frosk are in the cart now. They'll move faster than before. It's almost morning, Lochlan said. Wax was surprised, but the squire was right. The pale sunlight was just starting to brighten the sky. The strange sounds of the Wylderwood at night were giving way to the equally strange sounds of the forest during the day. As the sun hit the brush, flowers unfurled like tongues and dull plants started to shine with hidden, iridescent colors. Harks and Nezzy joined the group. They had red eyes from crying, but smiles on their faces. Wax could see that they were still a little hesitant, but the worst was behind them. We need to go, Nezzy said. We have to catch up to that cart. We can't just fight them straight on. We'll need a plan, Wax said, looking around at the little group. They thought back to the creatures and their dark little eyes. They can't see very well, which is why they hunt by hearing. I remember them trying to listen for us. Lochlan thought about this. So we'll need to be quiet, but not as worried about them seeing us. But the problem is, attacking their horns didn't work, and there are a lot more of them than us. Without knowing their weaknesses, we don't have great odds. Maybe fire? Gothak asked Harks. I could get them all, no prob, said Harks. The trouble is they're too close to the Tads and Tasses. My control is, let's just say I go from torch to towering inferno with not much in between. Wax could see that Nezzy had more to say. They looked at her with a gentle smile. What is it? Do you remember something else? No, but I have an idea, Nezzy said, and sang again. They're callous, cruel, and quick to fight, with fur to fend off thorn. They hunt by hearing, not by sight, defeat them by the horn.
Maybe the song can help. I think maybe we were just looking at it the wrong way. The little spark of hope in her voice made Wax feel stronger. We're going to do it, they thought. We're going to save the kids, and then we'll save this forest. And maybe, along the way, Wax would be able to share a few secrets of their own. To be continued. Thanks for listening!